Tonight, we explore a profound teaching in Zen called the Gateless Gate. This is one of the most gentle and useful ideas in all of Buddhism and can help you uncover the peace you have been looking for all along. Before we begin, feel free to share what time it is and where you're listening from. We spend so much of our lives searching. We look for peace, for happiness, for a sense of finally arriving somewhere. We imagine there is a barrier between where we are and where we want to be. A gate that remains stubbornly closed no matter how hard we push against it. But what if there is no gate at all? What if the barrier we have been struggling against is actually made of nothing? The Gateless Gate points to this simple truth. Zen teaches that there is no wall between you and peace. There never was. The obstruction exists only because we believe it does. And when that belief grows quiet, we discover that we were already standing in the place we were trying so hard to reach. As we begin, let your body settle wherever you are resting. There is nothing you need to figure out tonight. Nothing you need to achieve or understand. Simply listen and let these ancient teachings wash over you like gentle rain falling on soft earth. Take a slow breath and let's begin our journey together. From the time we are young, we begin to feel that something separates us from where we want to be. We sense a gap between ourselves and happiness, between our current life and the life we imagine we should be living. This feeling is so familiar that we rarely question it. We simply accept that there is a barrier, and we spend our energy trying to get past it. We work hard. We improve ourselves. We seek answers and accumulate knowledge. We do everything we can think of to break through to the other side, to finally arrive at that place where we will feel whole and at peace. But Zen asks us to look more carefully at this barrier we are so determined to overcome. Is it actually there? Can we touch it, see it, point to where it begins and ends? Or is it something we have imagined into existence, a wall made entirely of belief? The Gateless Gate is a teaching that has been passed down through many generations of Buddhist practitioners. It points to something both simple and profound. The gate we seek to pass through does not exist. It never did. We have been struggling against something that was never really there, exhausting ourselves trying to open a door that was always open. Tonight, we begin by looking at this illusion itself. We will meet people who believed deeply in the barrier, who searched and struggled just as we do. And we will discover what happened when they finally saw the truth. In a region of gentle hills and winding roads, there lived a young man named Ren who carried a restlessness in his heart. From childhood, he had felt that something was missing from his life, though he could never quite say what. He looked at the people around him, going about their daily tasks, and wondered how they could seem so content. Did they not feel the gap he felt? Did they not sense that there must be something more? As Ren grew older, this restlessness became a kind of hunger. He heard travelers speak of distant places where wise people lived, where ancient truths were taught, where those who were worthy could find lasting peace. These stories fed his longing. Somewhere out there, he became certain, was the answer he sought. One story captivated him above all others. It was said that hidden in the mountains was a garden of extraordinary beauty, a place where those who entered found their restlessness dissolve like morning dew. The garden had no name, and its location was a secret passed only through whispers. But those who had seen it, the stories claimed, were forever changed. They walked through the world with a lightness that others could only wonder at. Ren decided he would find this garden. He saved what money he could from his work in the fields. He asked every traveler and merchant about the hidden place. Most had never heard of it. A few had heard rumors, pointing vaguely toward one mountain range or another. Armed with these fragments, Ren set out. The search consumed years of his life. He climbed mountain paths that grew narrow and treacherous. He crossed rivers on bridges that swayed in the wind. He slept in caves and under the open sky. He asked everyone he met about the hidden garden, and the answers he received were always different. Some said it was to the east. Others pointed west. Some claimed it did not exist at all, that it was only a story people told to give the restless something to chase. But Ren could not accept this. The longing in his heart was too real. The garden had to exist. He simply had not searched hard enough, had not traveled far enough, had not asked the right people. So he continued, year after year, his youth slowly giving way to the weathered look of one who has spent too long on the road. One afternoon, when Ren was no longer young, he found himself on a dusty road that wound through a valley of wildflowers. He had been walking since dawn and his legs ached. His water was nearly gone. Up ahead, he saw a small tea stall set up beside the road, where an old woman sat in the shade of a faded cloth awning. Ren approached and lowered himself onto a wooden bench across from her. His body was grateful to rest. "Tea?" the woman asked. Her voice was unhurried, like a stream that has been flowing for a very long time. "Please," Ren said. She poured him a cup with steady hands. Her face was deeply lined, her hair white as snow, but her eyes held a brightness that made Ren think of clear water reflecting sky. "You have been walking a long time," she observed. "Where are you traveling?" Ren hesitated. After so many years, he felt almost foolish explaining his quest. But something about the woman's patient attention invited honesty. "I am searching for a garden," he said. "A hidden garden in the mountains. They say those who find it discover lasting peace. I have been looking for many years." The old woman nodded slowly, as if this were not an unusual thing to hear. "Many years is a long time. You must want this peace very much." "I do." Ren heard the weariness in his own voice. "But sometimes I wonder if I will ever find it. The garden seems to move. Everyone points in a different direction. I begin to doubt it even exists. And yet you continue searching. What else can I do? The longing does not stop. I cannot simply go home and pretend I do not feel it." The old woman was quiet for a moment, looking out at the valley around them. The afternoon light fell golden across the hills, and the wildflowers moved gently in the breeze. "Tell me," she said, "what do you imagine this garden looks like? If you were to find it tomorrow, what would you see?" Ren had thought about this countless times. The images came easily. "There would be flowers everywhere," he said. "Every color you could imagine. The air would be perfectly still, filled with a peace you could almost touch. Birds would be singing. The light would be soft and golden, falling through leaves in patterns that seemed almost alive." He paused, feeling the ache of longing in his chest. "And when you entered, all the restlessness would simply melt away. You would finally be home." The old woman listened with her eyes half closed. When he finished, she nodded again. "That is a beautiful vision," she said. Then she lifted her hand and gestured at the valley around them. "Tell me what you see here." Ren looked. He had been so tired when he arrived that he had barely noticed his surroundings. Now he saw the hills covered with wildflowers, purple and yellow and white, swaying gently in the afternoon breeze. The air was warm and still except for that gentle movement. Birds sang from somewhere nearby, their calls weaving together into something like music. The light of the afternoon sun fell soft and golden across everything, filtered through the leaves of the trees that lined the road. He looked back at the old woman, confused. She smiled gently. "Travelers have passed through this valley for generations," she said. "Many of them are searching just as you are. They hurry through with their eyes fixed on the mountains ahead, certain that what they seek is farther on. They never stop to see where they actually are." Ren felt something shift in his chest, though he resisted it. "But this cannot be the garden. There are no walls around it. There is no entrance I pass through. It is just an ordinary valley on an ordinary road." "Ah," the old woman said. "The walls, the entrance. Tell me, what do you imagine the walls of the hidden garden are made from? What does its gate look like?" Ren opened his mouth to answer, then stopped. He realized he had never questioned this. He had assumed there would be walls, a gate, a clear boundary between outside and inside. But the stories had never actually described such things. He had added them himself, without even noticing. The old woman poured him more tea. The steam rose in delicate curls and disappeared into the air. "Many seekers imagine a wall where there is none," she said. "They believe something separates them from what they seek. And so they search for a gate, an entrance, a way through. They walk past 1,000 beautiful valleys because they are looking for the boundary that will tell them they have arrived." She paused and looked at him directly. "But what if there is no wall? What if the separation exists only in the believing?" Ren sat with this for a long while. The tea was warm and slightly sweet. A bird landed on a branch nearby and watched him with small, bright eyes. The flowers continued their gentle movement in the breeze, unhurried, unconcerned with his confusion. "Are you saying," he said slowly, "that this is the garden? This valley, right here?" "I am saying there is no hidden garden with walls and a gate. There never was. There is only the world itself, always present, always available, always offering its beauty to anyone willing to see." She gestured again at the valley around them. "The garden is wherever someone stops searching long enough to notice what is actually here. The gate is simply the moment of seeing. You have been walking through the garden your entire life. You were just too busy looking for it to notice." Ren felt tears prick at his eyes, though he could not say if they were tears of grief or relief. He thought of all the years he had spent searching. All the mountains climbed, rivers crossed, strangers questioned. He had been so certain the garden was elsewhere that he needed to find the entrance and pass through. He had walked through 1,000 beautiful places without seeing any of them, because he was always looking ahead, always believing the real garden was farther on. "All this time," he said quietly, "all these years were not wasted," the old woman said gently. "They brought you here. They brought you to this moment, to this valley, to this cup of tea. Sometimes we need to search before we can stop searching." Sometimes we need to walk very far before we can see where we already are. Ren stayed in that valley for several days. He slept under the stars and woke to the songs of birds. He walked among the wildflowers and felt the sun on his face. The restlessness that had driven him for so long grew quiet, not because he had found something new, but because he had finally stopped to receive what had always been offered. On the morning he left, he thanked the old woman for what she had shown him. She shook her head. "I showed you nothing. I only pointed at what was already here. You were the one who finally let yourself see it." When Ren eventually returned to his home village, people noticed something different about him. He walked more slowly. He seemed to actually see the things he looked at. When asked about his travels, he would only smile and say that he had found what he was looking for. "Where was it?" They would ask. "How far did you have to go?" And Ren would gesture at whatever was around them, the fields, the sky, the simple buildings of the village, and say, "Not far at all. It was here all along. I just had to stop looking for it somewhere else." This story shows us something important about the gateless gate. Ren spent years searching for an entrance that did not exist. He believed so deeply in the barrier that he could not see the beauty surrounding him at every moment. It was only when the old woman gently pointed to what was already present that the wall dissolved. Zen teaches us that we suffer from a kind of spiritual blindness. We imagine a gate between ourselves and what we seek. This gate feels so real that we exhaust ourselves trying to find the key, the secret, the worthiness that will finally let us through. But the gateless gate points to something much simpler. There is no wall. There never was. The barrier we struggle against is made entirely of belief, constructed from our certainty that we are somehow separate from where we need to be. When we stop and really look, we find that we were standing in the garden all along. In a city known for its fine pottery, there lived a young woman named Nara who had given her life to working with clay. From the time she could hold a tool in her hands, she had shaped and formed and fired. Her pieces were good, her neighbors said. Perhaps even very good. But Nara did not feel satisfied. She wanted to learn from the best, to discover secrets that ordinary potters did not know. She had heard of a master named Su who lived on the outskirts of the city. He was very old, it was said, and his work was considered among the finest ever created. Students came from distant provinces hoping to learn from him. But Master Su was known to be selective. He would only teach those who proved themselves worthy. The test, according to rumor, was this. A student must bring a vessel of their own making, something that demonstrated true skill and understanding. Master Su would examine it carefully. If it met his standards, he would accept the student. If not, he would send them away without a word. Nara was terrified. She looked at her work and saw only flaws. The curves were not quite right. The glazes were not quite pure. How could she possibly create something worthy of a master's attention? But the longing to learn was stronger than her fear. She began to work. Day after day, she sat at her wheel, shaping bowl after bowl, cup after cup. Each time she finished a piece, she would examine it closely, turning it in her hands, holding it up to the light. And each time she would find something wrong. A slight unevenness in the rim, a tiny bubble in the glaze, a curve that did not flow quite as it should. she would set the piece aside and begin again. Weeks passed, then months. Nara's workshop filled with rejected pieces, stacked in corners and piled along walls. Her friends began to worry about her. She barely slept. She barely ate. Dark circles formed under her eyes. Her whole being was focused on creating the one perfect vessel that would open the gate to Master Su's teaching. "You are working too hard," her friend Lan told her one evening. "The pieces you have made are beautiful. Any one of them would impress a master." Nara shook her head. "You do not understand. Master Su only accepts the worthy. If I bring something flawed, he will send me away. I will have lost my only chance." "How do you know what he considers worthy?" "Everyone knows. The test is famous. Only the truly skilled are accepted." Lan looked at the piles of bowls and cups surrounding them. "And none of these are skilled enough?" Nara ran her fingers over the nearest bowl. It was lovely, really, with a glaze the color of autumn leaves. But she could see the tiny imperfection near the base, the place where her attention had wavered for just a moment. "Not yet," she said. "But I will keep trying until I make something perfect." Finally, after nearly a year, Nara made a bowl that she could not immediately find fault with. It was simple and graceful, with a glaze the color of pale morning sky. The walls were even. The curve was true. She held it in her hands and turned it again and again, searching for the flaw that must be there. But she could not find it. For the first time in many months, she felt a small hope. Perhaps this one would be enough. She wrapped the bowl carefully in soft cloth and placed it in a basket. She barely slept that night, and in the morning she set out for Master Su's workshop. The journey took her through the city and out along a quiet road lined with trees. As she walked, her anxiety grew. What if she had missed something? What if there was a flaw she had not seen? What if Master Su found it immediately and sent her away? The workshop was a humble place, smaller than she had expected, set among trees at the edge of a quiet stream. The morning light fell soft through the leaves, dappling the ground with shifting patterns. An old man sat outside on a low wooden stool, shaping a piece of clay with hands that moved like water. He did not look up as she approached, but continued working with an absorption that seemed complete. Nara waited. She did not want to interrupt. But after a while, the old man set down his work and raised his eyes to her. "You have come a long way," he said. His voice was quiet and unhurried. "Yes, Master Su. I have come to ask if you will teach me." Nara bowed deeply. "I have brought a vessel for your examination. I hope it will prove me worthy of your instruction." She unwrapped the bowl with trembling hands and held it out to him. Master Su took it gently. He turned it in his hands, examining it from different angles. The pale glaze caught the morning light. He ran his fingers along the rim, felt the weight of it, looked at the way the curve flowed from base to lip. Then he set it aside on a small wooden table. Nara's heart sank. She had seen no approval in his face, no nod of acceptance. Only that calm, unreadable expression. "I am sorry," she said quickly. "I know it is not perfect. There must be flaws I did not see. I worked for almost a year, but perhaps that was not long enough. If you would give me more time, I could try again. I could bring you something better." I could. Master Su held up his hand gently, and she fell silent. The bowl is well made, he said. There is nothing wrong with it. Nara blinked. Then you will accept me as a student? I will. But not because of the bowl. I do not understand. Master Su looked at her with eyes that held something like compassion. There is no test, he said simply. There never was. The words did not make sense. Nara stared at him. But everyone says, I know what everyone says. I have heard the stories for many years. Students arrive at my door clutching their finest work, terrified they will be found unworthy. They tell me about the test, the high standards, the judgment they are certain they will face. He shook his head slowly. I do not know who started these stories, but they are not true. I have never required a worthy vessel from anyone. I have never turned away a sincere student. Nara felt as though the ground had shifted beneath her feet. Never. Never. I teach anyone who genuinely wants to learn. That is my only requirement. A willing heart and patient hands. Skill can be developed over time. What matters is the willingness to begin. Nara thought of all the months she had spent in anguish. All the sleepless nights. All the bowls she had made and rejected, certain that she was not yet good enough. She thought of how she had tortured herself with the belief that she had to prove something before she could be accepted. All those pieces I made, she said quietly. All that fear. Were not wasted, Master Su said, echoing something she had not expected. You learned much in that year of work. Your hands grew more skilled. Your eye grew more refined. But the learning did not happen because you were preparing for a test. It happened because you were working with clay, which is what potters do. He stood and gestured for her to sit beside him, where another stool waited near a second wheel. The gate you feared was never locked, he said. It was never even closed. It was built entirely from your own expectations, your own belief that you had to prove yourself before you could be welcomed. But you were welcome from the first moment you wanted to learn. You simply did not know it. Nara sat down slowly. The wheel before her was smooth and worn from years of use. The clay beside it was cool and damp, ready to be shaped. So the test, she said. All those stories about worthiness and judgment are gates that students build for themselves. I cannot stop them from building these gates. I can only tell them, when they arrive, that the gates were never real. He settled onto his own stool and began to center a new piece of clay. Now, let us begin. There is much to learn, and the morning is pleasant. In the years that followed, Nara became one of Master Su's most dedicated students. Her work grew and deepened in ways she had never imagined possible. But she never forgot the lesson of that first morning. Whenever new students arrived, anxious and uncertain, clutching their best work and hoping it would be good enough, Nara would sit with them. She would tell them what she had learned. There is no test, she would say gently. There never was. The worthiness you are trying to prove is already yours. The gate you fear is made of nothing but your own belief. Set down your burden. You are already welcome here. Both of these stories point to the same truth, seen from different angles. Ren believed he needed to find a hidden garden. Nara believed she needed to prove her worthiness. Both of them exhausted themselves, struggling against gates that existed only in their own minds. The Buddha taught that much of our suffering comes from this kind of confusion. We mistake our beliefs for reality. We imagine barriers where there are none, and then we spend our precious energy fighting against shadows. The gateless gate invites us to look more carefully at the walls we believe surround us. Are they truly solid? Can we touch them, measure them, prove they exist? Or are they made of something thinner, something that dissolves when we examine it closely? This is not about pretending that obstacles do not exist in our lives. We all face real challenges, real difficulties, real situations that require our attention and effort. But there is a difference between practical challenges and imaginary barriers. The gateless gate speaks to the second kind. It addresses the belief that we are fundamentally separated from peace, from wholeness, from being at home in our own lives. That belief, Zen teaches us, is the only real gate. And it is a gate that was never locked. We stand on one side, struggling to get through, not realizing that we could simply step forward. The barrier exists only in our believing. When the believing grows quiet, even for a moment, we discover something remarkable. We were never outside. We were always here. Let your breathing settle now, soft and natural. Feel how you are already held by this moment, without needing to push through any barrier. There is nothing to prove, nowhere to arrive. Simply rest here, in the gentle truth of being present. We have seen how the barrier between ourselves and peace can be an illusion, a wall that exists only because we believe it does. Now, we go a little deeper into this teaching, to discover something that may be uncomfortable at first. The gate we struggle against is not placed there by life or by the universe. It is not a test imposed by some higher power. We build it ourselves, without even realizing what we are doing. This happens in a subtle way. We feel a longing for something more, something deeper, and so we begin to seek. We prepare ourselves. We work to become ready. We imagine that there is a threshold we must cross, and we do everything we can to reach it. But here is the paradox that Zen points to. The very act of seeking creates the sense that there is something to seek. The effort to break through creates the feeling that there is something to break through. Our preparation for arrival keeps arrival forever in the future. Buddhism teaches that grasping causes suffering, and we can grasp even at liberation. We can want peace so badly that our wanting becomes the very thing that disturbs our peace. We can try so hard to be present that our trying pulls us out of presence. Let us explore a story about how we build our own gates and what happens when we finally see what we have been doing. In a village at the foot of a sacred mountain, there lived a woman named Lin, who had dreamed her whole life of making a pilgrimage to the temple at the summit. The temple was famous throughout the land. It was said that those who prayed there received blessings that transformed their lives. Travelers who had made the journey spoke of it with reverence, their eyes growing soft with memory. Lin had wanted to go since she was a young girl, when her grandmother first told her stories of the temple. But somehow, the time had never been right. When she was young, she had no money for such a journey. She needed to work, to help her family, to save what little she could. She told herself she would go when she had saved enough. When she had saved enough, she realized she did not know the proper prayers to recite at the temple. What if she went all that way and did not know what to say? She would waste the opportunity. She began to study, to learn the prayers by heart, to practice them until they flowed without hesitation. When she knew the prayers, she noticed that her robes were worn and patched. How could she appear at a sacred temple in such shabby clothing? She would need to weave new cloth, to sew new robes, to present herself properly before the divine. When the robes were finished, she remembered that her children were still young. They needed her. How could she leave them for the weeks the journey would require? She would wait until they were grown, until they no longer depended on her daily care. Years passed this way. One preparation led to another. One reason to wait gave way to the next. Lin never doubted that she would make the pilgrimage someday. She simply had not yet completed all the necessary preparations. By the time her children were grown and her robes were fine and her prayers were perfect, Lin was no longer young. Her hair had turned grey. Her joints ached on cold mornings. She looked at the mountain in the distance and wondered if she still had the strength for such a climb. One autumn afternoon, a traveling monk passed through her village. His robes were dusty from the road, his sandals worn thin. He stopped at the well to draw water, and Lin offered him tea and a place to rest. "Thank you for your kindness," the monk said, settling onto a bench in the shade of her small garden. "I have been walking many days." "Where have you come from?" Lin asked. "From the east, and before that, the south. I have been walking for many years, really. It is what I do." Lin looked at him with curiosity. "Do you never stay in one place? Do you have no destination?" The monk smiled. "Every place is my destination. I arrive constantly, wherever I happen to be." Lin did not quite understand this, but she let it pass. "I have a destination," she said. "The temple on the mountain. I have been preparing to go there my whole life." "Ah, the temple. It is a beautiful place. I was there last spring." Lin felt a pang of longing so sharp it surprised her. "You have been there? What was it like?" "Quiet. Peaceful. The monks who tend it are kind. The view from the summit shows the whole valley spread out below like a painting." He sipped his tea. "When do you plan to make your journey?" Lin hesitated. The question, so simple, suddenly felt heavy. "Soon," she said. "When I am ready." "When will that be?" She opened her mouth to answer, but found she did not know what to say. When would she be ready? She had been preparing for decades. There was always one more thing to do, one more obstacle to clear, one more reason to wait. The monk watched her gently. "May I ask what you are waiting for?" Lin thought about all her preparations, the money she had saved, the prayers she had learned, the robes she had sewn, the children she had raised. Each one had seemed so necessary at the time. "I suppose I am waiting to be worthy," she said finally. "To be truly ready. To have done everything that should be done before such a journey. And what if you are never ready? What if there is always one more thing to prepare?" The question hung in the air between them. Lin felt something uncomfortable stirring in her chest. "I do not know," she admitted. The monk set down his teacup. "May I tell you something I have learned in my years of walking? Please. There is no state of perfect readiness. There is no moment when all preparations are complete and the path opens before us without obstacle. We imagine such a moment exists, and so we wait for it. We prepare for it. We delay our lives waiting for conditions to be just right. He paused. But conditions are never just right. Life is always imperfect, unfinished, in motion. If we wait for perfect readiness, we wait forever. Lynn thought about her grandmother, who had first told her about the temple. Her grandmother had never made the pilgrimage either. She too had always been preparing, always waiting. She had died still waiting. But surely some preparation is necessary, Lynn said. I cannot just set out with nothing. Of course, practical preparations have their place, but there is a difference between practical preparation and the endless delay of the heart. You have money. You know the prayers. Your children are grown. What are you truly waiting for? Lynn looked at her hands, weathered from years of work. She thought about all the reasons she had given herself, all the gates she had placed between herself and the mountain, and she realized something she had never quite seen before. I am afraid, she said quietly. I am afraid that when I finally go, it will not be what I imagined. That I will arrive and find nothing special. That all these years of dreaming will end in disappointment. The monk nodded slowly. So you keep preparing, because as long as you are preparing, the dream remains perfect. The temple in your imagination can never disappoint you. It is only the real temple that carries that risk. Tears pricked at Lynn's eyes. Yes, I think that is true. And so the preparation becomes a gate you built yourself without realizing it. A way of keeping the journey forever in the future, where it is safe from the imperfection of actually happening. They sat in silence for a while. A bird sang somewhere in the garden. The afternoon light grew softer as the sun moved toward the hills. How do I stop? Lynn asked finally. How do I stop building gates? The monk smiled gently. You see what you are doing. That is the beginning. And then you take a step. Not a perfect step. Not a fully prepared step. Just a step in the direction you have always wanted to go. But what if I am not ready? You are ready enough. You have always been ready enough. The readiness you seek is not something you achieve. It is something you choose. You choose to begin, even though conditions are imperfect. You choose to walk, even though you do not know exactly what you will find. He stood and stretched, preparing to continue his own journey. May I tell you one more thing? He asked. Yes. I have been to many temples, many sacred places. Some were beautiful, some were ordinary. But the most sacred thing I have found is not a place at all. It is the walking itself. The willingness to set out, to move toward what calls you, to let the journey happen even though you cannot control how it will unfold. He picked up his staff. The temple on the mountain is a fine destination, but do not wait so long for perfect readiness that you miss the pilgrimage your life is offering you every single day. After he left, Lynn sat for a long time in her garden. She thought about all the years she had spent preparing, all the gates she had built between herself and the journey she longed to take. She saw now that her preparations had become a kind of hiding, a way of keeping herself safe from the risk of actually living. The next morning, she put on her fine robes. She took the money she had saved. She recited the prayers she had learned, just to feel them on her lips. And then she stepped out of her door and began to walk. The journey was not easy. Her joints ached. The path was steeper than she had imagined. She had to rest often. But with each step, she felt something loosening in her chest. The gate she had built was dissolving, not because she had finally become ready, but because she had finally stopped waiting for readiness that would never come. When she reached the temple, it was both more and less than she had imagined. The monks were kind, as the traveler had said. The view was beautiful, but there was no magical transformation, no sudden illumination. There was simply the quiet joy of having arrived, of having finally taken the journey she had dreamed of for so long. On the way down the mountain, Lin understood something important. The temple had not changed her. What had changed her was the decision to stop waiting, the willingness to walk through the gate she had built, even though she had not felt ready. The gate had never been locked from the outside. She had been holding it closed herself all those years with her endless preparations. This story shows us how we can become our own obstacle. Lin longed to make her pilgrimage, but her preparations became a way of avoiding it. Each thing she needed to do before she could go was a stone in the wall she was building between herself and her deepest longing. Zen teaches that our seeking can become what prevents us from finding. We want something so much that we convince ourselves we must prepare endlessly before we can have it. But the preparation never ends, because we are using it to avoid the vulnerability of actually stepping forward. The gateless gate is not something we open through perfect preparation. It is something we walk through when we finally stop insisting that we must be ready first. Readiness is not a state we achieve. It is a choice we make, again and again, to move toward what matters, even though we feel imperfect and uncertain. In a town where music filled the evening air, there lived a young man named Kai, who played the flute more beautifully than anyone could remember hearing. When he practiced alone in the hills outside town, the notes drifted down like something not quite of this world. Birds would stop their own songs to listen. Travelers on the road would pause, enchanted, trying to find the source of the sound. But Kai never played for others. Not once had he performed in the town square where musicians gathered. Not once had he joined the festivals where players shared their gifts. When asked to play, he would shake his head and make excuses. He was not ready, he would say. Perhaps next year. Kai's mother worried about him. "You have a gift," she told him often. "Why do you hide it?" "I am not hiding," Kai would reply. "I am preparing. When I am good enough, I will share my music. Until then, I must practice." Good enough for what? Good enough for whom? People would be moved by what you play right now. But Kai would not be persuaded. He could hear every imperfection in his playing. The notes that were slightly off pitch, the breath that sometimes came unevenly, the passages that did not flow exactly as he imagined they should. How could he inflict such flawed music on others? They deserved better. He would keep practicing until his playing was perfect. Years passed. Kai's skill grew, but so did his standards. The better he became, the more clearly he could hear the distance between what he played and what he imagined was possible. Perfection remained always just out of reach, receding before him like a horizon. One autumn, a traveling musician came to town. He was an old man named Wei, and he was blind. He had been blind since childhood, people said, but he played the erhu with such feeling that audiences wept without knowing why. Wei gave a performance in the town square, and Kai went to listen. He sat at the back of the crowd, watching the old man's weathered fingers draw sounds from the strings that seemed to come from somewhere beyond the instrument itself. The music was not technically perfect. Kai's trained ear could hear that. There were moments when the timing wavered, when the pitch bent in ways that were not quite precise. But somehow, these imperfections did not diminish the music. They seemed to be part of it, giving it a humanity that perfection might have lacked. After the performance, when the crowd had dispersed, Kai found himself lingering. Wei sat alone, wiping down his instrument with a soft cloth. "You are still here," Wei said without looking up. His blind eyes gazed at nothing, but his attention seemed fully present. "How did you know?" Kai asked. "I heard you listening. You listen differently than most people, like someone who knows what music costs." Kai was startled. "I play the flute. A little." "A little?" Wei smiled. "That is not what your listening tells me. Someone who plays a little does not hold their breath during the difficult passages. You play seriously, perhaps too seriously." Kai did not know what to say. He felt exposed in a way he had not expected. "Will you sit with me?" Wei asked. "I could use some company before I move on." Kai sat on the bench beside him. The square was quiet now, the lanterns just beginning to be lit as evening came on. "Why do you not play for others?" Wei asked. "A young man with your training in a town that loves music. Yet I sense you have never performed here. How could you possibly know that?" "Because if you had, people would have mentioned you when I arrived. They would have said, 'You must hear our Kai. He plays the flute like an angel.' But no one spoke of you, which means you have kept your gift hidden." Kai felt heat rise to his cheeks. "I am not ready. My playing is not good enough." "Not good enough for what?" "For others to hear. I make too many mistakes. The notes are not always pure. The breathing is not always even. How can I ask people to listen to imperfection?" Wei was quiet for a moment. Then he laughed, a gentle sound without mockery. "You remind me of myself many years ago." "You? But your playing is beautiful. It is also imperfect. Did you not hear? The timing in the third passage was uneven. I lost the pitch briefly in the final section. My fingers are old and do not always obey me. But that did not seem to matter. The music was still moving." "Exactly." Wei turned his blind eyes toward Kai. "That did not seem to matter. So why do you believe your own imperfections would matter?" Kai struggled to answer. It seemed so obvious that his mistakes mattered, but when he tried to explain why, the words dissolved. "I was like you once," Wei continued. "In my youth, before I lost my sight, I was obsessed with perfection. I practiced endlessly, waiting for the day when my playing would be flawless. I believed that only then would I have something worth sharing. What happened? I went blind. And for a long time, I could not play at all. The grief was too heavy. But eventually, the music called me back. And when I began again, something had changed. I could no longer see the audience. I could not watch for their approval or their disappointment. I could only play and let the music be what it was. He ran his fingers along the strings of his erhu, not playing, just touching. I realized that my waiting for perfection had been a kind of hiding. I was so afraid of being judged, of falling short, that I built a gate to keep myself safe. The gate was called Not Yet Ready, and as long as I stayed behind it, I never had to risk being truly heard. Kai felt something tighten in his chest. But how do you bear it? Playing when you know it is not perfect? I stopped believing that perfection was the point. Music is not a demonstration of skill. It is a gift, offered imperfectly, from one heart to another. The imperfections are part of the offering. They are what make it human. Wei reached out and found Kai's hand, pressing it gently. Your flute. Do you have it with you? Kai hesitated. He always carried his flute, but the thought of playing here, now, made his stomach clench. Yes. Will you play something for me? Not for the town. Not for any audience. Just for an old blind man who would like to hear what you have been hiding. Every part of Kai wanted to refuse. The familiar excuses rose up. He was not prepared. He had not warmed up. The square was not the right place. But looking at Wei's patient face, he felt something else rising too. A weariness with his own excuses. A longing to finally offer what he had kept locked away. He took out his flute. His hands were trembling. I will make mistakes, he said. Of course you will. So do I. So does everyone who ever dares to make music. Play anyway. Kai raised the flute to his lips. He closed his eyes, as if by not seeing he could share a little of Wei's blindness, a little of his freedom from watching eyes. And he played. The notes rose into the evening air, imperfect and beautiful. His breath wavered in places. His fingers stumbled once on a difficult passage, but the music poured out of him, and it was alive in a way his solitary practice had never quite achieved. It was alive because it was being given, offered to another human being, risked in the space between them. When he finished, there were tears on his cheeks. Wei sat in silence for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Thank you, he said. That was a gift. Not a perfect gift. But gifts are not meant to be perfect. They are meant to be given. Kai wiped his eyes. I have been so afraid. I know. The fear is real, but the gate it builds is not. You have been standing behind a wall of your own making, waiting for a readiness that never comes. The readiness is not a feeling. It is a choice. You choose to offer your music, even though it is imperfect. That choice is the gate opening. Or rather, it is the moment you realize there was never a gate at all. That night, Kai played in the town square for the first time. His music was not perfect. It never would be. But it was real, and it was given freely, and those who heard it were moved in ways that perfection alone could never achieve. In the years that followed, Kai became known throughout the region for his playing. But more than his skill, people spoke of the quality of his performances. There was something vulnerable in his music, something honest. He played as one who knew his own limitations and offered anyway, and that offering opened something in those who listened. When young musicians came to him, paralyzed by their own fears of imperfection. He would tell them about the blind man who had helped him see. "The gate you think is keeping you out is one you built yourself," he would say. "You built it from fear, from the belief that you must be perfect before you can give. But the giving is the point, not the perfection. The gate opens the moment you decide to offer what you have, just as you are, without waiting for a readiness that will never feel complete." This story reveals another way we build our own gates. Kai had a gift to share, but his fear of imperfection became a wall between himself and the giving. He convinced himself that he needed to be ready, needed to be perfect, before he could offer his music. But that readiness never came, because he kept raising his standards to stay safely behind the gate. The Buddha taught that clinging causes suffering, and we can cling to ideals as tightly as we cling to possessions. Kai clung to an image of perfect music, and that clinging kept him from the imperfect, beautiful, human act of sharing what he had. The gateless gate cannot be opened by becoming perfect. It opens when we release our demand for perfection and offer ourselves as we are. The giving itself is what matters, not the flawlessness of the gift. When we wait until we are ready, we may wait forever. But when we choose to begin, imperfect and uncertain, we discover that the gate was never locked at all. Take a gentle breath now and let it go softly. Notice that you do not need to be different than you are in this moment. This breath is already complete. This moment is already enough. We have seen how the barrier we struggle against can be an illusion, and how we often build that barrier ourselves through our endless seeking and preparing. Now we go deeper still, into the heart of what the gateless gate truly points to. If there is no gate, then there can be no crossing. We wait for the moment when we will finally pass through and be transformed, when we will step from one side to the other and everything will change. But this moment never comes in the way we expect. It cannot come because there is nothing to pass through. This is perhaps the most difficult part of the teaching to accept. We are so used to thinking in terms of journeys and arrivals, of befores and afters, of the ordinary place where we stand and the sacred place we hope to reach. But the gateless gate dissolves all these distinctions. It reveals that we are already on the other side. We have always been on the other side. There is no crossing to make because there is nowhere else to go. Zen points to this truth again and again. What you seek, you already are. Where you hope to arrive, you have never left. The transformation you long for is not a movement from here to there. It is a seeing of what was always here, hidden in plain sight. Let us explore a story about what it means to discover that there was never any distance to travel, never any threshold to cross. In a monastery nestled among pine trees, there lived a devoted student named Hiro, who had given 12 years of his life to practice and study. He had come to the monastery as a young man, burning with the desire to understand. He had sat through countless hours of meditation. He had studied the old texts until he knew them by heart. He had served his teacher, Master Yin, with complete dedication, never questioning, never complaining. Master Yin was a woman of few words. She taught through silence as much as speech, through presence as much as instruction. Students who came to her expecting elaborate teachings were often disappointed. She gave them simple tasks instead. Sweep the courtyard. Prepare the rice. Sit quietly and watch your breath. Many students left after a few months, frustrated by what seemed like a lack of real teaching. They wanted explanations, insights, the feeling of gaining something they could hold on to. Master Yin offered none of this, but Hiro had stayed. He trusted that Master Yin knew something he did not, that her methods were leading somewhere even if he could not see the destination. He did everything she asked without complaint. He woke before dawn. He sat until his legs ached. He performed the humblest tasks with the same attention he gave to study. And through it all, he waited for the moment when Master Yin would recognize his dedication, waited for her to confirm his understanding, waited for the blessing that would tell him he had finally arrived. That moment never seemed to come. Other students received nods of approval after particularly good answers. Some were given special tasks that seemed to mark advancement, trusted with responsibilities that set them apart. A few were taken aside for private instruction that the others could only wonder about. But Hiro received none of this. Master Yin treated him with the same quiet manner she always had, neither praising nor criticizing, neither drawing him closer nor pushing him away. When he answered questions, she would simply nod and move on. When he completed tasks, she would accept his work without comment. At first, Hiro assumed he simply needed to work harder. He doubled his efforts in meditation, sitting longer, going deeper. He studied the texts more carefully, finding subtleties he had missed before. He performed his tasks with even greater attention, making each movement a form of practice. Surely Master Yin would notice. Surely she would see how devoted he was and give him the acknowledgement he craved. But the years passed and nothing changed. Hiro began to wonder if something was wrong with him. Perhaps he lacked some essential quality that the other students possessed. Perhaps there was a flaw in his understanding that everyone could see except him. Perhaps he was simply not capable of the awakening he sought. The doubt gnawed at him, even as he continued his practice with unwavering discipline. He watched the other students and tried to understand what they had that he lacked. They did not seem more dedicated than him. Their understanding, when they spoke of it, did not seem deeper than his own. Yet they received the acknowledgement he longed for, while he received only silence. One evening, after 12 years at the monastery, Hiro could bear it no longer. He found Master Yin sitting alone in the garden, watching the last light fade from the sky. The pines cast long shadows across the moss, and somewhere a night bird was beginning its song. Hiro knelt before her, his heart heavy with the question he had carried for so long. "Master, may I speak with you?" She nodded, her eyes remaining on the darkening horizon. "I have been here for 12 years, Hiro said. "I have done everything you asked. I have practiced, studied, served. I have given my whole life to this path." His voice trembled slightly. "But you have never given me any sign that my understanding has grown. You have never confirmed that I am progressing, that I am on the right path. The other students receive your approval. Why have I never received it?" Master Yin was quiet for a long moment. The night bird sang again, its notes falling through the stillness like drops of water. "What blessing do you seek?" she asked finally. "Your acknowledgement. Your confirmation that I have understood something, that my years here have not been wasted. I need to know that I am moving toward what I came here to find." Master Yin turned to look at him. Her eyes were calm and deep, reflecting the last glow of twilight. "Tell me," she said, when I nod at another student. "What do you imagine I am giving them?" Hiro considered this. "You are telling them they have understood. You are confirming their progress. You are giving them permission to trust what they have seen. And you believe you need this from me before you can trust your own understanding." The question struck Hiro in a way he had not expected. He opened his mouth to answer, then stopped. Did he need Master Yin's approval to trust himself? He had always assumed so. It had seemed so obvious that he had never questioned it. But now, with the question laid bare before him, he was not so sure. "I thought I did," he said slowly. "But I am no longer certain." Master Yin nodded. "This is the first honest thing you have said to me in 12 years. Hiro felt heat rise to his face. "What do you mean?" "You have been a devoted student. Your practice has been sincere. Your understanding has grown steadily over the years in ways you do not even recognize. I have watched you deepen, watched you mature, watched you become someone of genuine insight." She paused. "But you have been waiting for me to tell you this. You have been waiting for permission to trust what you have already seen. And that waiting has become its own obstacle. Then why did you never tell me? Why did you let me struggle all this time, doubting myself, wondering if I was failing? Because telling you would not help. You would have taken my words and made them into another thing to wait for. You would have thought, yes, Master Yin says I am progressing, but perhaps I need to progress more before I truly arrive. The waiting would have continued in a new form. You would have exchanged one gate for another." She stood and walked a few steps into the garden, her robes moving softly in the evening breeze. A firefly blinked in the darkness near the pines. "The blessing you seek is not mine to give or withhold," she said. "It was never something outside you, waiting to be bestowed. It is your own willingness to trust what you already know. You have been waiting at a gate that was always open, asking for a key that was already in your hand." Hiro sat with this, feeling something shift in his chest. All those years of waiting, all that longing for confirmation, all the doubt and self-questioning. And now he was being told that the confirmation had never been necessary, that he had been seeking permission for something that required no permission at all. "Why did you treat me differently from the other students?" he asked. "Why the silence when you gave them words of encouragement?" Master Yin turned back to face him. "Because you did not need encouragement. You needed to stop waiting for it. The other students needed small confirmations to continue. They were younger in their practice, more uncertain. A word of approval helped them find the strength to keep going. But you were beyond that. Your understanding was already ripening. What you needed was to trust it, and no one could give you that trust. You had to find it yourself. So the gate I was waiting to pass through? It was never there. There was no threshold between where you were and where you thought you needed to be. You were already here, already understanding, already home. You were just looking outside yourself for something that could only be found within. The night had deepened while they spoke. Stars were emerging overhead, small points of light in the vast darkness. Hiro felt something loosening in him that had been tight for years, a knot he had not even known he was carrying. The waiting was dissolving, not because he had finally received what he waited for, but because he saw at last that there was nothing to wait for. There had never been anything to wait for. "What do I do now?" he asked. Master Yin smiled, and it was the first time he could remember seeing her smile. Now you stop waiting. You stop looking for someone to tell you that you have arrived. You trust what you already know, and you live from that trust. The practice continues, but you will do it differently now. Not as preparation for something that will come later, simply as life itself, complete in each moment. Hiro remained in the garden for a long time after she left. He thought about all the years of waiting, all the energy he had poured into seeking confirmation that he was worthy, that he was progressing, that he was on his way to somewhere else. He had been so busy looking for the gate that he had not noticed he was already standing in the garden on the other side. When he finally rose to return to his room, he felt lighter than he had in years. The stars wheeled overhead in their ancient patterns. The pines whispered in the night breeze. And Hiro walked among them, no longer waiting, no longer seeking permission, simply present, simply here, simply home. This story shows us something essential about the gateless gate. Hiro was not lacking anything. His understanding was genuine. His practice was true. But he kept waiting for someone to confirm this, to give him permission to trust what he already knew. The gate he stood before was his own need for external approval, and it kept him feeling separate from what he had already found. Zen teaches that awakening is not something granted by another. A teacher can point, can guide, can create conditions for seeing, but the seeing itself must come from within. No one can give it to us, and no one can withhold it. When we wait for permission to trust our own experience, we create a barrier that no blessing can dissolve. The Buddha taught that each being must walk the path themselves. Others can show the way, but no one can walk for us. And more than this, the path and the destination are not separate. We do not walk the path in order to arrive somewhere else. The walking itself is the arriving. Each step is complete. Each moment is the destination. Take a gentle breath now and let it go slowly. There is no threshold you must cross to be at peace. This moment, just as it is complete. Simply rest here, in the simplicity of being present. We have traveled deep into the teaching of the gateless gate. We have seen that the barrier is an illusion, that we build it ourselves through our seeking, and that there is no crossing to make because we are already where we hope to arrive. Now we come to something even more beautiful. Where does the gateless gate lead? What do we find when we finally stop seeking and open our eyes? There is an old Zen saying about the journey of awakening. First, mountains are mountains and rivers are rivers. Then, mountains are no longer mountains and rivers are no longer rivers. Finally, mountains are again mountains and rivers are again rivers. This points to a profound truth. The spiritual journey does not take us to some extraordinary realm beyond ordinary life. It brings us back to where we started, but with eyes that can finally see. The gateless gate leads not to a special place reserved for the awakened. It leads right here, to this very life, to the dishes and the sweeping and the morning light through the window. It leads us home to the ordinary, which we discover was sacred all along. Let us explore a story about what it means to return to where we never actually left. In a village at the edge of a great forest, there lived a woman named May, who had spent 20 years searching for something she could not quite name. As a young woman, She had felt a longing that the routines of village life could not satisfy. She wanted to understand the deeper truths, to touch the sacred, to find the peace that ordinary existence seemed to lack. So she had left. She had traveled to distant temples perched on mountainsides. She had sat at the feet of teachers renowned for their wisdom. She had practiced disciplines that pushed her body and mind to their limits. She had read ancient texts by candlelight and debated fine points of philosophy with fellow seekers. Along the way, she had experienced things that seemed to confirm she was on the right path. Moments of profound stillness during meditation, insights that cracked open her understanding of reality, feelings of connection to something vast and timeless. These experiences kept her searching, kept her traveling from one teacher to the next, one temple to the next, certain that if she just went a little further, she would finally arrive. But 20 years passed, and the final arrival never came. The experiences were real, but they did not last. The peace she touched in meditation would dissolve when she returned to daily life. The insights that seemed so clear would grow fuzzy with time. She began to wonder if she was chasing something that could never be caught, a horizon that would always recede no matter how far she walked. Then, word came that her mother was ill. May's father had died years ago, and her mother had lived alone in the village ever since. Now she needed care, and there was no one else to provide it. May packed her few belongings and began the long journey home. She arrived in late autumn, when the leaves were turning gold and red, and the air carried the first hint of winter. The village looked smaller than she remembered, quieter, simpler. Her mother's house was modest, with a garden gone slightly wild from neglect and a roof that needed repair. Her mother was sitting by the window when May entered, wrapped in a faded blanket, watching the leaves fall from the old maple tree in the yard. "You came," her mother said. Her voice was weaker than May remembered, but her eyes were still bright. "Of course I came." May knelt beside her and took her hand. "I am sorry I was away so long." Her mother smiled. "You were looking for something. Did you find it?" May hesitated. The honest answer was complicated. She had found many things. She had learned much. But the final peace she had sought, the lasting transformation she had hoped for, remained elusive. "I found pieces of it," she said finally. "But not the whole." Her mother nodded, as if this were expected. Maybe the whole is not something that can be found in one place. Maybe it is scattered everywhere, in small pieces, waiting to be noticed. In the days that followed, May settled into the rhythm of caring for her mother. She cooked simple meals. She cleaned the house. She helped her mother dress in the morning and undress at night. She repaired the roof and tended the garden. These tasks were humble, nothing like the exalted practices she had learned in the temples. And yet, as she did them, something strange began to happen. One morning, she was washing rice for breakfast. The water was cold on her hands. The grains made a soft rushing sound as she swirled them. Light from the window fell across the bowl, making the water sparkle. And for a moment, May felt something she recognized. The same stillness she had touched in her deepest meditations. The same sense of presence, of being fully here, that she had traveled so far to find. She stood motionless, afraid to disturb it. But it did not leave. It stayed with her as she poured out the water and added fresh. It stayed as she lit the fire and set the pot to cook. It was here, in this ordinary kitchen, in this simple task she had done 1,000 times without thinking. That evening, sitting with her mother by the window, May tried to understand what had happened. "I felt something today," she said, "while I was washing the rice. Something I used to feel only in the temples, during the deepest practice. But it came while I was just standing in the kitchen, doing something ordinary." Her mother looked at her with gentle curiosity. "Tell me what it felt like." Stillness. Presence. Like everything became very clear and simple. Like I was fully there, in that moment, without wanting to be anywhere else. In the temples, we would practice for hours to touch that feeling. We had elaborate techniques, strict disciplines. And here it came while I was just washing rice. Her mother nodded slowly. "And this surprises you?" "I thought I had to be somewhere special, doing something special, to feel that way. I thought ordinary life was what I had to escape from. But today the sacred was right here, in the kitchen, in the washing of rice." Her mother was quiet for a moment. The last light of evening was fading, painting the clouds in shades of pink and gold. "I have never been to your temples," her mother said. "I have never studied with teachers or read the old texts. I have just lived here, in this house, doing simple things. Cooking and cleaning and watching the seasons turn." She paused. "But I have known peace. Not always, not perfectly, but often enough. It comes when I am paying attention to what is right in front of me. When I am here, fully here, without wishing I were somewhere else." May thought about all the years she had spent seeking, all the miles traveled, all the teachings received, all the practices mastered. She had been searching for something that her mother, who had never searched at all, seemed to possess naturally. "Why did I not see this before?" she asked. "Why did I have to go so far to find what was here all along?" "Maybe you did have to go," her mother said. "Maybe you needed to search before you could stop searching. Maybe you needed to see that what you sought was not in the temples before you could recognize it in the kitchen." She smiled softly. The leaving was part of coming home. In the months that followed, May continued to care for her mother. She continued to cook and clean and tend the garden. And she continued to find, in these simple acts, the presence she had sought in distant places. It was not dramatic. There were no visions, no overwhelming experiences. There was just this quiet aliveness in ordinary moments, a sense of the sacred hidden in plain sight. When her mother asked her about the temples, about what she had learned in all those years of study, May found it difficult to answer. The teachings had been elaborate, the practices complex. But what she had actually found, in the end, was something much simpler. "They taught me to pay attention," she said. "They taught me to be present. But I thought presence meant something special, something separate from daily life. I did not understand that presence is just being fully here, wherever here happens to be. Washing rice, sweeping the floor, sitting with you by the window. And all those years of practice, were they wasted?" May considered this. No, they were not wasted. They cleared something away. They exhausted my belief that what I sought was somewhere else. I had to search the whole world before I could stop searching. I had to go through the gate before I could see there was no gate. Her mother reached out and took her hand. The gesture was simple, like so many simple things May was learning to see. You sound peaceful." "I am. For the first time, I think I truly am. Not because I achieved something or found something special, but because I finally stopped looking for somewhere else to be. I came home, and I discovered that home was what I had been looking for all along." "Perhaps that is what all the seeking was for," her mother said. "Not to find something out there, but to exhaust yourself enough that you could finally rest here." May squeezed her mother's hand gently. Through the window, she could see the old maple tree, bare now in winter, its branches tracing delicate patterns against the grey sky. She had looked at that tree 1,000 times as a child without really seeing it. Now it seemed quietly magnificent, a living sculpture of patience and time. "I think you may be right," she said. When her mother eventually died, on a quiet winter morning with snow falling outside the window, May was holding her hand. The moment was ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. Just a breath stopping, just a life completing itself, just the natural end of a natural process. May stayed in the village after that. She did not return to the temples or resume her seeking. There was nothing more to seek. The gateless gate had led her here, to this simple house, this ordinary life, these humble tasks that revealed themselves, when approached with presence, as sacred as anything she had ever experienced in the most exalted temples. This story shows us where the gateless gate leads. May traveled far and learned much, but in the end, the gate opened onto her mother's kitchen. The sacred she had sought in distant places was waiting for her in the washing of rice, the tending of a garden, the sitting by a window watching leaves fall. Zen teaches that enlightenment is not an escape from ordinary life. It is ordinary life, seen without the veil of seeking. The gateless gate does not lead to another world. It reveals this world as it truly is. When we stop looking for something beyond what is here becomes radiant with presence. The Buddha did not teach his followers to flee the world. He taught them to see clearly, to be fully present, to meet each moment without resistance or craving. This seeing can happen anywhere. It does not require special circumstances or elevated states. It requires only our full attention, our willingness to be here, our release of the belief that peace is somewhere else. In a fishing village where the sea met the shore in an endless rhythm of coming and going, there lived a man named Tao who carried a heaviness in his heart. Years ago, he had been a monk in a mountain monastery. He had taken vows, shaved his head, devoted himself to the path of awakening. He had believed, with the fervor of youth, that he would attain enlightenment if he only practiced hard enough. But enlightenment had not come. Years of meditation, years of discipline, years of following every instruction his teachers gave him, and still he felt like the same confused person he had always been. The other monks seemed to progress, while he remained stuck. The peace he glimpsed in meditation would evaporate the moment he returned to daily activities. He began to feel like a fraud, going through the motions of practice while missing whatever essential quality the others possessed. Eventually, the weight of his perceived failure became too heavy. He left the monastery and returned to the world. He wandered for a time, lost and purposeless, until he came to this fishing village and found work on a boat. The labor was hard and simple. Wake before dawn. Go out on the water. Cast the nets. Haul in the catch. Come home as the sun set. Sleep. Repeat. He told no one about his past as a monk. He wanted to forget that chapter of his life, to pretend it had never happened. He was just Tao the fisherman now, a man who had failed at the one thing that mattered and was now living out his days in quiet resignation. There was an old fisherman named Jing who worked the boat beside Tao's. He was weathered by decades of sun and salt, his face lined like driftwood, his hands thick with calluses. He moved slowly but surely, with the economy of motion that comes from doing the same tasks for a lifetime. There was something peaceful about him that Tao noticed but did not understand. One evening, after the boats had been secured and the catch sold at market, Tao found himself sitting on the dock beside Jing. The sun was setting over the water, painting the waves in shades of orange and gold. Gulls wheeled overhead, their cries mixing with the gentle lapping of water against wood. "You carry something heavy," Jing said, not looking at Tao, his eyes on the horizon. "I have watched you for months now. You work hard, but you are not really here. Your body pulls the nets, but your mind is somewhere else." Tao was startled. He had not thought anyone noticed him at all. "What do you mean?" "You move like a man who has given up, like someone going through the motions of living while waiting for it to be over." Jing turned to look at him. "What happened to you before you came here?" For a long moment, Tao said nothing. The heaviness in his chest pressed down, as it always did when he thought about the monastery. But something about Jing's patient attention invited honesty. "I was a monk," he said finally. "For 15 years, in a monastery in the mountains. I devoted everything to the path. I wanted to awaken, to find the peace that the teachings promised." He paused, feeling the old shame rise. "But I failed. I never achieved what I was seeking. In the end, I could not bear the pretense any longer, so I left." Jing nodded slowly, as if this were not surprising news. "And you came here to forget?" "Yes. To do something simple. Something that does not require me to be more than I am." They sat in silence for a while. The sun continued its descent, the colors deepening across the water. "I was also a seeker once," Jing said quietly. "In my youth, I traveled to temples and sat with teachers. I wanted what you wanted. That final peace, that transformation that would make everything different." Tao looked at him with surprise. "You were a seeker?" "For many years. I tried everything. I pushed myself to the limits of what body and mind could endure. I was certain that enlightenment was just around the corner, if I only tried a little harder." Jing smiled, a small smile touched with old memory. "But it never came. The corner kept receding. The harder I tried, the further away it seemed. What happened? I gave up. Like you. I returned to my village, to my family's fishing boats, feeling that I had wasted my youth chasing something that did not exist." He gestured at the water, the boats, the simple dock where they sat. "And I became a fisherman. This is what I have done for 50 years now." "And you found peace here? In this simple life?" Jing was quiet for a moment, considering the question. "I found something, but not in the way I expected. Not through achievement or attainment. More like giving up led to a kind of opening." "What do you mean?" "When I stopped trying to reach enlightenment, something relaxed in me. I was just here, mending nets, watching the water, doing what needed to be done. And somewhere in that simplicity, in that release of striving, I began to notice something. A presence in ordinary moments. A peace that was not separate from the work, but somehow within it. Jing picked up a piece of rope and began to coil it, his hands moving with unconscious skill. I realized that the monastery had taught me something important, even though I thought I had failed there. It taught me to pay attention, to be present with what I was doing. I just had not understood that this attention could happen anywhere, not only on a meditation cushion. It could happen while mending nets, while watching the sunrise over the water, while sitting on a dock at the end of the day. Tao felt something stir in him, a faint echo of something he had almost forgotten. "So you found what you were seeking?" he asked. "Just by doing ordinary things?" I found that what I was seeking was never somewhere else. It was always here, in whatever I was doing, if I was truly present with it. The gate I thought I had failed to pass through, it turned out there was no gate. I was already on the other side. I just could not see it because I was looking for something dramatic, something special. I missed the ordinary miracle that was right in front of me. Tao sat with this, feeling something loosen in his chest. It was strange to hear his own story reflected back at him, but with a different ending. "But how?" he asked. "How did you make that shift? How did you go from feeling like a failure to finding peace in mending nets?" Jing thought for a moment. It was not one thing. It was slow. At first, I was just going through the motions, like you, numb, disappointed. But the work has a way of wearing down the thoughts if you let it. The sea does not care about your spiritual ambitions. The fish do not care whether you achieved enlightenment. They just are what they are, and the work is what it is, and eventually, you either resist that or you surrender to it. And you surrendered. Eventually, though surrender is perhaps too dramatic a word, I just got tired of fighting. Tired of comparing my life to what I thought it should be. One morning, I woke up and went out on the water, and it was just beautiful. The light, the waves, the feeling of the boat moving beneath me. And I was not thinking about what I had lost or what I had failed to achieve. I was just there, and something in me said, "This is enough. This is more than enough." The sun had almost set now. The first stars were appearing in the darkening sky. The water lapped gently against the dock in its eternal rhythm. "I feel like I wasted 15 years, Tao said quietly. "All that practice, all that striving, and nothing to show for it." Jing shook his head slowly. "Nothing is wasted. The monastery taught you things you do not even realize yet. It prepared you, even though the preparation did not look like success. And the feeling of failure, that too has its place. Sometimes we need to fail at finding what we seek before we can discover it was never lost." He stood, stretching his old bones, and looked down at Tao. "Tomorrow, when we go out on the water, try something. Do not think about the past or the future. Do not judge yourself as a failed monk or a resigned fisherman. Just be here, with the nets and the water and the sky. Feel your hands pulling the ropes. Feel the boat rocking beneath you. Let yourself be completely present with this simple work." He began to walk away, then paused and turned back. "The enlightenment you sought in the monastery, I do not know if such a thing exists in the way we imagined it. But presence exists. Being fully here, fully alive to this moment that exists. And that may be all the enlightenment we ever needed. In the weeks that followed, Tao tried what Jing had suggested. At first, it was difficult. His mind wanted to wander, to judge, to compare this simple life with his imagined failures. But slowly, he began to find moments of genuine presence. The feel of the wet rope in his hands, the cry of the gulls, the smell of salt and fish, the way the morning light sparkled on the water. These moments were not dramatic. They were not the blinding insight he had once hoped for. But they were real. They were here. And they carried a quiet peace that his years of striving had never achieved. One morning, hauling in a heavy net, Tao suddenly laughed. Jing, working beside him, raised an eyebrow. "What is funny?" "I spent 15 years trying to reach somewhere else," Tao said. "Somewhere special, somewhere sacred. And here I am, covered in fish scales, doing the simplest work in the world. And this is it. This is what I was looking for. Not somewhere else. Right here." Jing smiled. "The gateless gate. You have walked through. There is no gate. No. There never was. Just the willingness to be here, fully here, without needing to be anywhere else." This story shows us another face of the same truth. Tao believed he had failed at the spiritual path, only to discover that the path had led him exactly where he needed to be. The enlightenment he sought in the monastery was waiting for him on a fishing boat, in the simple act of being present with his work. Buddhism teaches that awakening is not reserved for special people in special places. It is available to anyone, anywhere, in any circumstance. The gateless gate opens onto whatever life we are actually living. The monk's cell and the fisherman's boat, the temple and the kitchen, the meditation cushion and the market square, all of them are the sacred ground where presence can be found. We do not need to escape ordinary life to find peace. We need only to be fully present within it. The gateless gate does not lead us away from where we are. It leads us more deeply into it. It reveals that we never left home. We only thought we did. Let your body settle now, feeling its weight wherever you are resting. Take a slow breath and let it go. You are already here, already home. The ordinary moment holds you gently, asking nothing, offering everything. We have seen that the gateless gate leads not to some special realm, but right back to ordinary life. We have met people who traveled far only to find that home was what they were seeking all along. The sacred is here, in the kitchen and the fishing boat, in the washing of rice and the mending of nets. But understanding this is one thing. Living it is another. We have spent so much of our lives reaching for something better, something more, something beyond this moment. We reach for the next achievement, the next experience, the next stage of development. Even when we understand that peace is here, the habit of reaching continues. The hand keeps grasping even when the mind knows there is nothing to grasp. So what does it look like to actually live without reaching? What does it mean to be fully here, in this moment, without needing it to be different? This is not a teaching we can understand only with our minds. It must be lived, practiced, embodied in the small moments that make up our days. Let us explore a story about what it means to rest in the present without constantly leaning toward the future. In a town known for its weavers, there lived a young woman named Yuki whose hands could create patterns of extraordinary beauty. She had learned the craft from her grandmother and had practiced since childhood. By the time she was grown, her work was sought by merchants from distant provinces. She should have been content. But Yuki was never satisfied. Each piece she finished seemed flawed to her. The colors were not quite right. The patterns were not quite balanced. She would complete a weaving and immediately begin thinking about the next one, certain that the next one would finally be the one that matched the vision in her mind. She worked constantly, barely pausing to eat or sleep. Her workshop was filled with finished pieces that others considered masterpieces, but to Yuki they were all failures, all stepping stones toward the perfect work she had not yet created. Her friends worried about her. Her family urged her to rest, but she could not stop. The next piece, she always believed, would be the one. One autumn, an elderly weaver named Oma came to the town. She was famous throughout the land, though not for the reasons one might expect. Her work was beautiful, yes, but what drew people to her was something else. There was a quality of peace about her that seemed to infuse everything she touched. People said that sitting in a room with one of her weavings made them feel calm in a way they could not explain. Yuki sought her out immediately. If anyone could help her create the perfect work, surely it was this master. She found Oma in a small room at the inn, sitting before a simple loom. The old woman's hands moved slowly, almost lazily, guiding the threads with no apparent urgency. Yuki watched for a while, growing impatient. At this pace, how did she ever finish anything? "You are the one they call gifted," Oma said without looking up. "I have heard of your work. They say you weave faster than anyone and that your patterns are complex beyond what most can achieve." "I try to improve with each piece," Yuki said. "I am never satisfied. There is always something that could be better. And does this dissatisfaction drive you to excellence?" "I believe so. Without it, I would become complacent. I would stop growing." Oma nodded slowly, her hands still moving at their unhurried pace. "Come, sit beside me. Watch what I do." Yuki sat, though she felt restless almost immediately. The old woman's movements were so slow. How could she bear it? "You are uncomfortable," Oma observed. "I am not used to this pace. When I weave, my hands move quickly. I am always thinking about the next row, the next color, the next pattern. Yes, I can see that in your work. It is technically brilliant. Every thread perfectly placed. But there is a quality missing." Yuki felt a flash of defensiveness. "What quality?" "Peace. Presence. The feeling that the weaver was actually there, in each moment of creation, rather than always reaching ahead to what comes next." Oma paused in her work and turned to look at Yuki directly. "Your weavings are made by someone who is never here, someone who is always somewhere else, in the future, in the imagined perfect peace that never arrives." The words stung, but Yuki could not deny their truth. She was never present with her work. She was always thinking about how it could be better, always leaning toward the next piece, always dissatisfied with what was actually under her hands. How do I change? She asked. How do I learn to be present? I have tried, but my mind always races ahead. Oma returned to her weaving. You cannot force presence. Presence is what remains when you stop forcing. It is not something you achieve. It is something you allow. But I do not know how to allow it. My whole life I have pushed, strived, reached for the next thing. It is all I know. Then perhaps you need to learn a different way of working. Not as a means to an end. Not as a step towards some future perfection. But as a practice of being fully here with whatever is under your hands. She gestured for Yuki to take her place at the loom. Weave something. Anything. But do not think about the finished piece. Do not compare what you are doing to what you imagine you should be doing. Just feel the thread between your fingers. Just watch the shuttle move. Just be here, with this row, this moment, this breath. Yuki sat before the loom. Her hands took up the shuttle automatically, and she began to weave. Almost immediately, her mind started its usual calculations. This color here would lead to that pattern there, which would need to be balanced by this other color, which meant she should plan ahead for the next several rows. Stop, Oma said gently. You are already gone. You are already in the future, planning, calculating. Come back. Yuki paused, frustrated. I do not know how to stop. My mind does this on its own. I know. It is a strong habit. But habits can be softened. Try again. This time, when you notice your mind racing ahead, simply come back to your hands. To the thread. To this single movement you are making right now. Yuki tried again. And again. Each time, her mind would leap forward, and Oma would gently call her back. It was exhausting in a strange way, this constant returning. She had never noticed how rarely she was actually present with her work. They continued this way for hours. Slowly, something began to shift. There were moments, brief at first, when Yuki found herself simply there. Not planning, not evaluating, just feeling the thread, watching the colors merge, being present with the movement of her hands. These moments felt different from anything she had experienced before. There was a quietness in them, a peace that her usual way of working never allowed. There, Oma said softly. Did you feel that? Yes. It was like everything slowed down. Like I was actually here, instead of always somewhere else. That is presence. It is not something you create. It is what appears when you stop creating so much else. When you stop reaching for the future, the present opens up. But it lasted only a moment. Then my mind started planning again. That is natural. The mind has been reaching for a long time. It does not stop overnight. But you felt the difference. You know now what presence is. That knowing is the beginning. Over the following days, Yuki continued to practice with Oma. She learned to notice when her mind raced ahead and to gently bring it back. She learned that dissatisfaction was just another form of reaching, always wanting the work to be something other than what it was. She learned that presence was not a destination but a practice, something to return to again and again, without judgment when she forgot. I notice I judge myself, Yuki said one afternoon. When my mind races ahead, I feel frustrated. I think I should be better at this by now. Oma laughed softly. And that judgment is just more reaching toward a version of yourself who is perfectly present all the time. Let that go too. There is no perfect state you are supposed to achieve. There is just this moment, and then this moment, and then this moment. Each one an opportunity to be here. The weaving she produced during those days was different from her usual work. Technically, it was simpler, but there was something else in it, a quality of peace that her more complex pieces lacked. When she looked at it, she did not immediately see what was wrong with it. She just saw what it was. "This is what people feel in your work," Yuki said to Oma. "This is why they say your weavings bring calm. It is not the patterns or the colors. It is that you are actually present when you make them. That presence stays in the work." Oma smiled. "The work carries whatever we bring to it. If we bring striving and dissatisfaction, that is what people will feel. If we bring presence and peace, that is what they will receive. But what about excellence? What about improvement? If I stop reaching for better, will I not stagnate?" There is a difference between reaching and growing. Reaching is tense. It comes from dissatisfaction, from the feeling that this moment is not enough. Growing is natural. It happens by itself when we are fully present with our work. We see more clearly. We respond more sensitively. We improve not because we are grasping at improvement, but because presence itself is a teacher. When Yuki returned to her own workshop, she brought this practice with her. She wove more slowly now, though not as slowly as Oma. She paused more often to feel the thread, to notice where her mind had gone, to come back to the present. Her production decreased, but something else increased. A quality in her work that people noticed even if they could not name it. And within herself, a peace she had never known during all her years of relentless striving. She still wanted to improve. She still saw ways her work could grow. But these were no longer sources of suffering. They were natural movements of a craft that was alive, unfolding at its own pace, without the desperate reaching that had once consumed her. Years later, when young weavers came to her with the same restless ambition she had once possessed, she would tell them about Oma and what she had learned. "The excellence you seek will not come from reaching," she would say. "It will come from presence. Be fully here with your work, and the work will teach you what you need to know. The next piece will come when it comes. For now, there is only this piece, this thread, this moment. That is enough. That has always been enough." This story shows us what it looks like to shift from reaching to presence. Yuki's constant striving had created technically excellent work, but it lacked the peace that can only come from actually being present in the moment of creation. When she learned to stop reaching for the next piece, the current piece revealed its own quiet beauty. Zen teaches that striving can become its own obstacle. When we are always leaning toward the future, we miss what is here. When we are always dissatisfied with this moment, we cannot receive its gifts. The gateless gate asks us to stop reaching and simply be where we are. Not because reaching is wrong, but because what we are reaching for is already here. The Buddha spoke of a middle way between indulgence and extreme effort. This middle way is not passive or lazy. It is fully engaged, but without the tension of grasping. It is present and attentive, but without the dissatisfaction that poisons so much of our doing. When we find this balance, our work becomes a form of meditation, and every moment becomes a doorway to peace. In a valley where travelers often passed on their way to distant markets, there lived a woman named Ami who had spent most of her life waiting. As a young woman, she had waited for the right opportunity to begin her real life. As a mother, she had waited for her children to grow so she could finally pursue her own interests. As her children left home, she had waited for circumstances to align so she could travel, learn, explore. Now she was past 50 and she was still waiting. Her husband had died several years ago. Her children lived in other towns, and she ran a small inn that provided for her needs. She should have been free to do all the things she had postponed, but somehow she could not begin. There was always a reason to wait a little longer. The inn was too busy. The season was not right. She did not feel prepared. A traveling merchant named Ko passed through her inn several times a year. He was perhaps 10 years older than Ami, with a weathered face and kind eyes. Unlike the other merchants who hurried through on their way to somewhere else, Ko always lingered. He would sit by the fire in the evening, sipping tea, watching the flames with an expression of quiet contentment. Ami noticed that Ko seemed genuinely happy in a way that puzzled her. His life was not easy. He traveled constantly, slept in different beds every night, owned nothing more than he could carry. And yet he radiated a peace that Ami, with her stable home and secure livelihood, did not possess. One evening, when the other guests had retired and the fire had burned down to embers, Ami found the courage to ask him about it. "You always seem so content," she said. "How is that possible? Your life is uncertain, always moving, never settled." Ko smiled and took a sip of his tea. "Perhaps that is why. I have no fixed place to compare my life to. I have no image of how things should be that makes me dissatisfied with how they are. I am just here, in this inn, by this fire, and that is enough." "But do you not want more? Do you not have dreams of something better?" "I used to. When I was younger, I was always dreaming of the next destination, the next opportunity, the life I would have someday when conditions were right." He shook his head slowly. "I spent many years that way, always somewhere else in my mind, always waiting for real life to begin." "What changed?" Ko was quiet for a moment, watching the last flames flicker among the coals. "I got sick. Very sick when I was about your age. I thought I was going to die. I lay in a stranger's house for weeks, unable to move, certain that my time was ending." He paused, and I realized that I had wasted most of my life waiting for the right moment, the right circumstances, the right feeling. All that time, life was happening, and I was not really there for it. I was always in the future, in the life I planned to live someday. "Did you recover?" "Obviously." He smiled. "But I was different after that. I stopped waiting. I stopped believing that real life was somewhere ahead of me, in some better circumstances that might never come. I started living in the only place life actually exists, which is right here, right now, in whatever situation I find myself." Ami felt something stir in her chest, something uncomfortable and familiar. "I have been waiting my whole life," she said quietly. "Always for something. First for my children to grow. Then for my husband to retire so we could travel together. Then he died, and I told myself I would wait until the grief passed. Now I do not know what I am waiting for. The waiting has become a habit. Ko nodded. That is how it happens. We wait for so long that we forget there was ever something we were waiting for. The waiting becomes its own way of life, a way of not being fully here. How do I stop? How do I stop waiting and start living? You cannot force it. Waiting is a kind of reaching toward a future that never arrives. Stopping is not something you do. It is something you stop doing. He set down his teacup and looked at her directly. Right now, in this moment, are you waiting for something? Ami considered the question. Was she waiting? She noticed a subtle tension in her body, a leaning forward, a sense that this moment was not quite the real thing. Yes, even now she was waiting. For what? She could not say. But the waiting was there. Yes, she admitted. Even now. I do not know what for, but yes. Can you feel that tension? That leaning towards something else? Yes. Now, just for a moment, let it go. Do not try to feel anything special. Just stop leaning. Let yourself settle back into this moment exactly as it is. The fire, the tea, the quiet of the evening. Nothing needs to happen. Nothing needs to change. Just this. Ami tried. It was harder than she expected. The habit of waiting was so ingrained that relaxing it felt almost frightening, like letting go of a rope she had been gripping for years. But slowly, something released. The tension in her body softened. The sense of leaning forward eased. And she found herself simply here, in the quiet inn, by the dying fire, with this kind stranger. Not waiting for anything. Just present. Oh, she said softly. Yes. That is what it feels like to stop waiting. It is not dramatic. It is just this. Just being here, without needing to be somewhere else. They sat together in comfortable silence. The fire crackled and popped. Outside, the wind moved through the trees. Ami noticed how beautiful these simple things were when she was not looking past them towards something else. I have missed so much, she said finally. All those years of waiting, all those moments I was not really present for. Perhaps, but that is also in the past now. The only question is what you do with this moment. And this one. And this one. Ko smiled gently. The past is gone. The future does not exist yet. There is only now. You can spend it waiting, or you can spend it being here. The choice is always available, in every moment. It seems too simple. It is simple. But simple is not the same as easy. The habit of waiting is strong. It will reassert itself many times. You will find yourself leaning forward again, reaching for the next thing, postponing your presence until conditions improve. When you notice this, you simply come back. That is the practice. Not achieving some permanent state of presence, but returning to presence again and again. And that is enough? Just returning? That is everything. The returning is the practice. Each time you notice you have been waiting, each time you come back to the present, you are loosening the habit. You are choosing to be here instead of somewhere else. Over time, the waiting weakens, not because you fight it, but because you keep choosing something else. Ami looked at the fire, now just a soft glow of embers. She had sat by this fire hundreds of times, but she realized she had never really been here for it. She had always been thinking about what needed to be done, what might happen tomorrow, what she was waiting for. "Thank you," she said. "I do not know if I can change a lifetime of habit, but at least now I see what I have been doing." Seeing is the beginning. You cannot change what you do not see, and you do not need to change everything at once, just this moment, and then the next. That is how a life is lived. After Ko left the next morning, Ami stood in the doorway of her inn and watched him go. The sun was rising over the hills, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. She noticed how beautiful it was. She noticed that she was here, seeing it, not waiting for something else. In the months that followed, she practiced what Ko had shown her. She noticed when she was waiting and gently let it go. She found herself more present with her guests, more attentive to the small pleasures of her days. She did not become a different person. She did not travel to distant lands or transform her life in dramatic ways. But something shifted. The waiting that had colored everything began to fade, and in its place, a quiet presence emerged that made even the most ordinary moments feel like enough. She never did take the grand journey she had postponed for so many years. But one day, walking to the market on an ordinary morning, she realized she was no longer waiting for her real life to begin. This was her real life. It had always been her real life. She had just been too busy waiting to notice. This story shows us another face of living without reaching. Ami had spent decades waiting for conditions to be right, for real life to begin. The waiting had become so habitual that she no longer knew what she was waiting for. It took a gentle stranger to show her that she could simply stop, could let go of the constant leaning toward a future that never arrived. Buddhism teaches that the present moment is the only place where life actually exists. The past is memory. The future is imagination. Only now is real. When we spend our lives waiting for something else, we miss the life that is actually happening. We trade reality for fantasy, presence for anticipation. The gateless gate opens when we stop waiting, not because waiting is wrong, but because what we are waiting for is already here. The life we postpone is the life we are living. The moment we reach for is the moment we are in. When we finally stop reaching, we find that we have arrived. We have always been arrived. We simply did not notice because we were too busy looking ahead. Let your breath soften now and feel yourself settling into this moment. There is nothing to reach for, nothing to wait for. This breath, this awareness, this gentle presence is enough. Simply rest here. We have explored what it means to stop reaching and to rest in the present moment. We have seen that the habit of leaning toward the future can be softened through gentle practice, through returning again and again to what is here. Now we go deeper still, into something even more beautiful. The gateless gate is not a single threshold we pass through once. It is not a dramatic moment of awakening that happens and then is finished. Every moment is the gate. Every breath, every sight, every ordinary experience is an invitation to be fully present, fully here. This means that awakening is not something that happened in the past or will happen in the future. It is available now. It is available in this breath you are taking. It is available in the sound of these words, in the feeling of your body resting, in the simple fact of being alive in this instant. Zen masters have always pointed to this truth. They would ask their students, "Where is the Buddha?" And the answer was always here, now, in this moment, in this activity, in this breath. Not somewhere else. Not at some other time. The gate is always open because it is simply this moment, offering itself completely, asking only that we receive it. Let us explore another story about this truth. In a busy market town where merchants shouted their wares and customers hurried between stalls, there lived a man named Zen who was always focused on what came next. His mind moved constantly, planning, calculating, anticipating. When he was eating breakfast, he was thinking about the morning's work. When he was working, he was thinking about the afternoon's tasks. When he was resting in the evening, he was thinking about tomorrow. He was successful by most measures. His business prospered. His family was provided for. People respected his industriousness. But Zen himself felt strangely hollow. Life seemed to rush past him in a blur of activity. Years passed without him noticing. His children grew up, and he could barely remember their childhoods. Seasons changed, and he was always surprised when winter arrived again. Each week, Zen went to the market to buy supplies for his household. He always moved quickly through the stalls, getting what he needed and leaving as fast as possible. Time was precious. There was always something else that needed to be done. At one corner of the market, an old woman named Cho sold fruit from a small wooden cart. Her offerings were simple, just whatever was in season, arranged neatly on a worn cloth. Unlike the other vendors who shouted and bargained aggressively, Cho sat quietly, watching the flow of people with a calm expression. She never seemed hurried, never seemed anxious about making sales. Zen had passed her cart hundreds of times without really noticing her. But one morning, something made him pause. Perhaps it was the quality of stillness around her, so different from the frantic energy of the market. Perhaps it was the way she looked at him, really looked, as if she actually saw him rather than just another customer. "You are always rushing," she observed. Her voice was unhurried, like a stream that has been flowing for a very long time. Zen blinked, surprised to be addressed. "There is much to do. Time does not wait." "No, time does not wait. But you seem to be the one who is not waiting. You are always somewhere else, always ahead of yourself." She picked up a ripe pear and held it out to him. "When did you last taste a piece of fruit? Really taste it, without thinking about the next thing?" Zen took the pear, but did not answer. He could not remember. Eating was just something he did between other activities, fuel for the body so it could continue working. "Sit with me for a moment," Cho said, gesturing to a small stool beside her cart. "The market will still be here in 5 minutes. Your tasks will still be waiting." Something in her voice made Zen obey, though he felt restless almost immediately. He sat on the stool, the pear still in his hand, his mind already calculating how quickly he could leave. "You are not here," Cho observed. "Your body is on that stool, but you are somewhere else." "Where?" "I am thinking about what I need to do today. The supplies I need to buy. The work waiting at home. And when you are doing that work, where will you be?" Zen opened his mouth to answer, then stopped. He would be thinking about something else, of course. He was always thinking about something else. The present moment was just a brief stop on the way to the next thing. "I see you understand," Cho said. "You live your whole life this way. Always in the future, never here. And then you wonder why life feels empty, why the years blur together, why you cannot remember your children growing up." Zen felt a flash of defensiveness. "I have responsibilities. I cannot simply sit and do nothing." "I am not asking you to do nothing. I am asking you to be here while you do something. There is a difference." She nodded at the pear in his hand. "Eat that. But really, eat it. Feel the skin against your fingers. Smell it. Taste it fully, without rushing to the next bite. Let yourself be completely present with this one simple act." Zen looked at the pear. It was a small thing, not important, but something about Cho's quiet certainty made him want to try. He brought the fruit to his nose and inhaled. The scent was sweet, richer than he had noticed before. He bit into it. The juice was cool on his tongue, the flesh soft and yielding. He chewed slowly, paying attention to the texture, the flavor, the simple pleasure of eating something fresh. For a moment, just a moment, his mind stopped racing ahead. There was just this: the taste of pear, the morning sunlight, the sounds of the market around him. He was here, fully here, in a way he had not been for longer than he could remember. Then his mind started up again, reminding him of all the things he needed to do. But the moment had happened. He had felt it. "There," Cho said softly. "That is what being present feels like. That is what every moment offers, if you are willing to receive it. But I cannot eat pears all day. I have work to do, responsibilities to meet." "Of course. But presence is not about what you do. It is about how you do it. You can rush through your work, always ahead of yourself, missing everything. Or you can be here, in each task, in each moment, fully alive to what is actually happening." She smiled gently. "The gate is always open, Zen. Every moment is an invitation, but you have to stop long enough to walk through." "What gate? What do you mean?" Cho was quiet for a moment, watching the people hurry past. There is something people spend their whole lives looking for. Peace, fulfillment, the feeling that life means something. They search for it in achievements, in possessions, in future plans. But it is not in any of those things. It is here, in this moment, in the simple act of being fully present. She tapped the wooden cart beside her. "I almost died once. Many years ago. I was sick for months, certain that each day would be my last. And in that time, something changed in me. I stopped rushing toward the future because I thought I had no future. I was left with only now, and I discovered that now was enough. More than enough. Now was everything I had ever been looking for. But you recovered." "Yes. But I did not go back to the old way of living. I kept what illness had taught me. Each morning when I wake, I know that this day is a gift. Each moment is an opportunity to be here, to taste this life fully, to walk through the gate that is always open." Zen sat with this for a while. The market continued its noisy bustle around them, but their small corner felt like a still point in the middle of it all. "I do not know if I can change," he said finally. "I have been this way my whole life. Always rushing, always planning, always somewhere else. You do not have to change everything at once. Just this moment. Can you be here for this moment? And then the next?" That is all presence asks. Not a transformation of your entire life. Just attention to what is actually here, right now. Zen finished the pear. He noticed the last of the juice on his fingers, the slight stickiness, the faint sweetness when he licked his thumb. Such a small thing, but it felt like waking up from a long sleep. "Thank you," he said. "I do not even know what you have given me, but thank you. I have given you nothing. I have only pointed at what was always here. The gate is always open. Every moment is the invitation. You just have to stop rushing past." Zen stood, brushing off his robe. The pear was finished, but something of that moment remained with him. A taste of what presence felt like. "May I come back?" he asked. "To talk with you again?" "I am here every morning. The pear may be different, but the moment is always new." In the weeks that followed, Zen began to practice what Cho had shown him. He tried to be present with his work instead of always thinking about what came next. He tried to really see his children when he spoke with them, to really taste his food when he ate, to really feel the evening air when he sat outside his house. It was not easy. The habit of rushing was strong, and he caught himself again and again leaping ahead to the future. But each time he noticed, he would try to come back. He would take a breath and feel his feet on the ground. He would look around and actually see where he was. Slowly, something began to shift. Life stopped feeling like a blur. Moments became more distinct, more vivid, more real. He started to remember things, small things he would have missed before. The way his daughter laughed at a joke, the color of the sky at sunset, the feel of his wife's hand in his. He went back to Cho's cart many times. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they just sat together in comfortable silence, two people practicing the art of being present in a world that was always rushing somewhere else. "The gate is always open," Cho would say. "Every moment. Not just the special ones. The boring ones too. The difficult ones. The ordinary ones. All of them are invitations. All of them are chances to be here." And slowly, Zen began to understand that this was the only gate there had ever been. Not something to be found at the end of a journey. Not something that would open someday when conditions were right. Just this. Just now. Just the willingness to stop rushing and receive what each moment offered. One day, his son asked him why he seemed different. "You are more here," the boy said. "You used to always seem like you were thinking about something else. Now, when I talk to you, you actually listen." Zen smiled. "I am learning to stop rushing past the gate." "What gate?" "This one," Zen said, gesturing at the two of them sitting together, at the evening light coming through the window, at the simple moment they were sharing. "This moment. It is the only gate there has ever been." This story shows us that the gateless gate is not a single doorway we pass through once. It is present in every moment, in every ordinary experience, waiting for us to notice. Zen had been rushing past this gate his whole life, always focused on what came next, never present with what was here. It took a wise old woman to help him see that he did not need to go anywhere to find what he was seeking. He only needed to stop and be present with what was already in front of him. Zen teaches that every moment is complete. Every experience, no matter how ordinary, contains everything we need. When we are truly present, washing dishes is as sacred as meditation. Walking to work is as profound as pilgrimage. The gate is not somewhere else. It is here, now, in whatever we are doing. The Buddha did not teach that enlightenment was reserved for special moments in special places. He taught that awakening is available in every instant, to anyone who is willing to be fully present. The gateless gate opens again and again, with every breath offering us the same invitation. Be here, receive this moment, let it be enough. In a village where the river wound slowly through fields of green and gold, there lived a young woman named Rin, who had very little patience. She walked fast, talked fast, thought fast. Life was too short to waste on slowness. There were things to accomplish, places to go, a future to build. Her grandmother, Hua, was the opposite. She moved through life like the river itself, slow and unhurried, taking her time with everything. She would spend an hour drinking a cup of tea. She would pause in the middle of walking to look at a flower or watch a bird. She seemed entirely unconcerned with the passage of time. Rin loved her grandmother, but could not understand her. How could she stand to move so slowly? Did she not realize how much she was missing by taking so long with everything? When Hua grew old and needed care, Rin was the one who came to help. She moved into her grandmother's small house by the river and took over the daily tasks of cooking, cleaning, and tending the garden. She tried to be patient, but the slowness of her grandmother's life made her restless. Everything took so long. A walk to the well, a meal eaten bite by bite, an evening spent watching the river flow past. One afternoon, Rin was hurrying through the garden, pulling weeds with quick, efficient movements. Her grandmother came outside and lowered herself slowly onto a bench to watch. "You are always rushing," Hua observed. "Even pulling weeds becomes a race." Rin wiped sweat from her forehead. "If I do not hurry, I will not finish before dinner. And if you do not finish before dinner, what happens? I will have to do it tomorrow. And tomorrow has its own tasks." Hua nodded slowly. "So you rush through today to save time for tomorrow, and then you rush through tomorrow to save time for the next day. When does the rushing end?" Rin paused, a weed dangling from her hand. She had never thought about it that way. The rushing never ended. There was always something else that needed to be done. "Come sit with me," Hua said, patting the bench beside her. "The weeds will wait. But I need to finish. The weeds will wait. Sit with me." Rin sighed, but obeyed. She sat on the bench, her body still tense with the urge to move, to do, to accomplish. "Look at the river," Hua said. "What do you see?" Rin looked. The river was the same as always. Brown water moving slowly between green banks. Nothing special. "I see the river," she said. "Look again." Really look. Rin tried to see what her grandmother was pointing at. The water caught the afternoon light, glinting gold and silver. Small eddies swirled near the banks. carrying leaves and twigs in lazy circles. A dragonfly skimmed the surface, leaving tiny ripples that spread and faded. On the far bank, a heron stood motionless, waiting with infinite patience. "It is beautiful," Rin admitted. "I never noticed before. You never stopped long enough to see. You have passed this river every day of your life, and you have never really looked at it." Hua's voice was gentle, without judgment. "That is what rushing does. It blinds us to what is actually here. But there is so much to do. I cannot spend all day looking at rivers. I am not asking you to spend all day. I am asking you to spend this moment. Just this one." Hua took her granddaughter's hand. "Every moment is a doorway, Rin. An invitation to be fully present, to see what is actually here, to receive the gift of being alive. But most people hurry past these doorways without noticing. They are always on their way somewhere else." "A doorway to what?" Hua was quiet for a long moment, watching the river flow. "When I was young, I was like you. Always rushing, always busy, always looking ahead. I thought that was how life was supposed to be lived. And then one day, I was sitting by this very river, and I saw it. Really saw it. The light on the water, the way the current moved, the heron standing so still, and something in me stopped. Not just my body, something deeper. The constant rushing in my mind went quiet, and I was just here. Just present. Just alive." "What happened?" "Nothing dramatic. But everything felt different. Vivid. Real. Like I had been sleepwalking my whole life, and had suddenly woken up. And I realized that this was what I had been rushing toward all along. This simple presence. This being here, fully here, with what is." She squeezed Rin's hand. "I had been looking for a gate to pass through, something that would take me to a better life, a more meaningful existence. And I discovered that the gate was right here. It had always been right here. Every moment was the gate. I had just been too busy rushing to walk through." Rin sat with this, feeling the bench beneath her, the warmth of her grandmother's hand, the gentle movement of air across her skin. She tried to be present, really present, the way Hua described. It was harder than she expected. Her mind kept jumping ahead to the tasks waiting, the weeds unfinished, the dinner to prepare. But for a moment, just a moment, she felt something shift. The river became more vivid. The sounds of the afternoon, birds and insects, and the soft lapping of water became clearer. She was here, actually here, in a way she rarely was. "Oh," she said softly. "Yes, that is it. That is the gate opening. Not somewhere else. Not at some special time. Right here, in this ordinary moment, sitting on this old bench, looking at this river you have seen 1,000 times." But it faded. Already my mind is rushing again. That is natural. Presence is not a permanent state we achieve and then keep forever. It is a practice, a returning, again and again, to what is here. The gate is always open, but we keep walking past. The practice is to notice, to stop, to walk through, even if only for a moment, and then to do it again and again. In the months that followed, as Rin cared for her grandmother, something changed in her. she still moved quickly at times. She still had tasks to complete and responsibilities to meet, but she began to pause more often. She would stop in the middle of hanging laundry and feel the sun on her face. She would sit with her grandmother in the evening and really watch the river, letting its slow movement quiet the rushing in her mind. She began to see what Hua had been trying to show her. Every moment was a doorway. The extraordinary was hidden inside the ordinary, waiting to be seen. The gate was not somewhere else, at the end of some journey. It was here, now, in the simple act of being present. One evening, her grandmother asked her what she was learning. "I am learning to see," Rin said. "I spent my whole life looking, but I never really saw anything. I was too busy rushing to the next thing. And now? Now I see. Not always, not perfectly, but more than before. The gate you talked about, the one in every moment, I am beginning to find it." She paused, watching the last light fade from the river. "I understand now why you move so slowly. You are not wasting time. You are savoring it. You are walking through all the gates I used to rush past." Hua smiled. "Every moment is a gift. Most people tear open one gift while reaching for the next, never really receiving any of them. But if you slow down, if you receive each one fully, you find that every gift contains everything you ever wanted." When Hua eventually died, peacefully, on a spring morning with the sound of the river outside the window, Rin was holding her hand. And she understood, in a way she could not have understood before, that her grandmother had given her something precious. Not something to be achieved or possessed, but a way of being. A willingness to stop rushing. A capacity to see the gate that was always open in every moment, in every breath. She still lives in the house by the river. She moves more slowly now, though she is still young. When visitors come, they sometimes notice something about her, a quality of presence, a way of really seeing them when they speak. They feel calmer in her company, though they cannot say why. If they ask her secret, she just smiles and points at the river. "Every moment is a doorway," she says. "Most people hurry past. But if you stop, if you really look, you find that the gate you have been searching for has been open all along." This story shows us that the gateless gate is available in every ordinary moment. Rin was so busy rushing toward the future that she missed the doorways all around her. It took her grandmother's gentle teaching to show her that what she sought was not somewhere ahead, but right here, hidden in plain sight. Buddhism teaches that the sacred is not separate from the ordinary. Every moment holds the same potential for awakening as any moment that has ever been. The enlightenment that happened under the Bodhi tree is available under every tree, in every room, in every breath. The gate is not closed and waiting to be opened. It is open now and always has been. We spend so much of our lives waiting for special moments, for the conditions to be right, for the time when we will finally be present. But this waiting is itself what keeps us from what we seek. The gateless gate asks us to stop waiting and walk through, right now, in this very ordinary moment. Not tomorrow. Not when we are ready. Now. Let your eyes soften and take a slow breath. This moment, right here, is the open gate. There is nothing to wait for, nothing to prepare, Simply let yourself be here and receive what this moment offers. We have journeyed far together through the teaching of the gateless gate. We have seen that the barrier is an illusion, that we build it ourselves through our seeking, that there is no crossing to make because we are already where we hope to arrive. We have discovered that the gate leads back to ordinary life, that living without reaching is the practice, and that every moment is an open doorway. Now we come to the heart of it all, the simplest truth and the most profound. After all the searching, after all the questioning, after all the understanding, what remains? You are already home. You have always been home. The gate we sought was only ever our own belief that we were somewhere else. When that belief grows quiet, we find ourselves exactly where we have always been. Not changed, not transformed into something new, but finally seeing what was always true. This is not something to achieve or understand with the mind alone. It is something to rest in, something to let wash over you like gentle water. The journey is complete, not because we have arrived somewhere new, but because we have stopped pretending we were ever anywhere else. Tonight, as we prepare for rest, we explore what it means to finally come home. We meet people who searched and struggled, only to find that home had been waiting for them all along, patient and unchanged, exactly where they left it. In a village surrounded by ancient trees, there lived an old man named Jin who had spent his life traveling. As a young man, he had felt a restlessness that the familiar streets of his birthplace could not satisfy. He had dreamed of distant lands, of experiences that would transform him, of wisdom he might find beyond the horizon. So he had left. For 40 years he wandered, crossing mountains and deserts, sailing across seas, walking roads that led to places he had never imagined. He studied with teachers in foreign temples. He worked at trades he had never known. He learned languages and customs and ways of seeing the world that his village had never shown him. Along the way, he had sought something he could never quite name, a sense of completion, a feeling of having arrived, a peace that would finally settle the restlessness that had driven him from home so many years ago. He had touched this feeling at times, in moments of beauty or insight, but it never lasted. The restlessness always returned, and he would move on to the next place, the next teacher, the next hope. Now he was old. His body could no longer carry him to distant lands. His eyes had grown weak, his steps uncertain. He had returned to his village at last, not in triumph, but in exhaustion. The journey had not given him what he sought. He felt he had failed somehow, had missed something essential that others seemed to find. His childhood friend Mao still lived in the village. Unlike Jin, Mao had never left. He had married, raised children, worked the same fields his father had worked. His life had been simple, bounded by the same hills Jin had fled so long ago. One evening, the two old men sat together beneath a tree they had climbed as boys. The branches were thicker now, the trunk wider, but the shape was the same. Jin could remember sitting in this exact spot 60 years ago, dreaming of escape. "You have seen so much," Mao said. "I have always wondered what it was like, out there beyond the hills." "What did you find?" Jin was quiet for a long moment. The evening light was fading, painting the fields in shades of gold and amber. A bird sang somewhere in the branches above them. "I found many things," he said finally. beautiful things, strange things, things I could never have imagined staying here. But what I was looking for, I did not find. What were you looking for? Jin struggled to put it into words. He had struggled with this his whole life. Peace, I think. A sense of being where I belonged. The feeling that I had arrived somewhere, that the journey was complete. He shook his head slowly. I thought it was out there, beyond the horizon. I thought if I just traveled far enough, searched hard enough, I would find it. But it was always just ahead of me. Every time I thought I was close, it moved further away. Mao nodded slowly, as if this made sense to him. And now you have come back. Has the traveling ended? My body has ended it. I cannot walk those roads anymore. But the restlessness remains. Even now, sitting here, I feel it. The sense that I should be somewhere else, doing something else, searching for something I have not yet found. The two old men sat in silence for a while. The bird continued its song. The light continued to fade. May I tell you something? Mao asked. Something I have never told anyone? Of course. When we were young, I envied you. You had the courage to leave, to seek something greater than this small village. I stayed because I was afraid. Afraid of the unknown, afraid of leaving everything familiar. I told myself I was content, but there was always a part of me that wondered what I had missed. Jin nodded. He had suspected as much. But something happened over the years, Mao continued. I stopped wondering. Not because I convinced myself I had made the right choice, but because I found something here that I did not expect to find. What did you find? Mao gestured at the fields around them, at the tree they sat beneath, at the village in the distance, with its familiar rooftops and winding paths. This. Just this. I stopped looking for something else, and I found that this was enough. More than enough. The peace you were seeking in distant lands, I found it here, in the same place I was born. Not because this place is special, but because I stopped believing I needed to be somewhere else. Jin felt something stir in his chest, a mix of grief and recognition. I traveled the whole world looking for home, he said quietly. And you found it without leaving. I do not think it matters whether we leave or stay. What matters is whether we stop seeking long enough to see where we actually are. Mao paused, watching a flock of birds settle into the trees for the night. For many years, I compared my life to yours. I imagined you having adventures, finding wisdom, becoming someone larger than this small village could contain. I felt diminished by my own stillness. What changed? I realized that the restlessness you felt, I felt it too. Just because I stayed in one place did not mean I was at peace. My body was here, but my mind was often elsewhere, wondering about roads not taken, lives not lived. Mao smiled softly. The seeking can happen anywhere, Jin. You sought by moving. I sought by imagining. Neither of us was really here. And now? Now I am here. Not because I stopped having thoughts about other places, but because I stopped believing those thoughts were telling me something important. This place, this village, these fields and trees and familiar faces, they are enough. They were always enough. I just could not see it while I was busy looking elsewhere. Jin felt something stir in his chest, a mix of grief and recognition. You have come back, Mao continued. The traveling is over. Perhaps now you can find what you were looking for. Not because you have finally arrived at the right place, but because you can finally stop. Jin sat with this. The restlessness was still there, the old habit of seeking. But beneath it, he felt something else. A weariness with the seeking itself. A willingness, finally, to let it go. He looked at the fields, golden in the fading light. He looked at the old tree they sat beneath, the same tree from his childhood. He looked at his friend's weathered face, lined with years of simple living. Everything was exactly as it had been, exactly as it had always been. The village had not changed. The hills had not changed. Only Jin had changed, had circled the whole world to arrive back at this spot. I think I understand, he said slowly. The home I was seeking was never somewhere else. It was always here. I just could not see it because I was too busy looking for it. The gate was always open, Mao said. You just kept walking past it, looking for a more impressive entrance. Jin laughed, a sound that surprised him. It had been a long time since he had laughed. 40 years of walking past an open gate. That sounds like something a fool would do. Or a human being. We all do it, in our own ways. We all believe that what we seek is somewhere else, that we need to find the right path, the right teacher, the right circumstances. And all the while, the gate stands open right where we are. The sun had nearly set now. The first stars were appearing in the darkening sky. Jin felt something loosening in his chest, a knot that had been tied for as long as he could remember. I am home, he said. The words were simple, but they carried a weight he had not expected. I am finally home. You were always home. You just did not know it. In the weeks that followed, Jin began to settle into village life. It was strange at first, being still after so many years of movement. The restlessness arose often, the old urge to seek, to move, to find something beyond where he was. But now he recognized it for what it was, just a habit, an old pattern that no longer needed to be followed. He would sit beneath the old tree and watch the light change over the fields. He would talk with the villagers he had known as a child, now old like him. He would eat simple food and sleep in a simple bed and wake to the same sunrise he had woken to as a boy. Sometimes he missed the road. The excitement of not knowing what lay ahead, the freedom of having no fixed place. But even as he missed it, he understood something he had not understood before. The freedom he had sought through movement was also available in stillness. The excitement of discovery was also present in the familiar, if he looked with fresh eyes. One morning, walking through the village, he passed a young man packing a bag, clearly preparing for a journey. Where are you going? Jin asked. Away from here, the young man said. There must be more to life than this village. I am going to find it. Jin nodded slowly. He recognized the restlessness in the young man's eyes. It was the same restlessness that had driven him away so many years ago. I hope you find what you are looking for, Jin said. Did you find it? Everyone says you traveled the whole world. Jin was quiet for a moment. I found many things. But what I was really looking for, I found here, after I came back. It was here all along. I just could not see it until I stopped seeking. The young man looked skeptical. That sounds like something someone says when they have given up. Perhaps. Or perhaps it is something you can only understand after you have sought long enough to know that the seeking itself was the obstacle. Jin smiled gently. Go on your journey. See the world. Learn what it has to teach you. Maybe you will find what you are looking for out there. Or maybe, like me, you will circle back and find it here. Either way, the journey is yours to make. And slowly, the peace he had sought for 40 years began to find him. Not because he had achieved anything or understood anything new, but because he had finally stopped running. He had finally let himself be where he was. He had finally come home. When young people in the village asked him about his travels, he would tell them stories of distant lands and strange adventures. But when they asked what he had learned, his answer was always the same. I learned that home is not a place you find. It is a place you stop leaving. The gate is always open. You do not need to travel the world to walk through. You only need to stop believing you are somewhere else. This story shows us the final truth of the gateless gate. Jin traveled the whole world looking for home, only to find it waiting for him in the village he had left so long ago. The gate had always been open. He had simply been too busy seeking to walk through. Zen teaches that what we seek is not distant or hidden. It is right here, right where we are, in this very moment. The search itself is what creates the sense of distance. When we stop searching, we discover that we have already arrived. We have always been arrived. The Buddha taught that our true nature is not something we develop or achieve. It is what we already are, beneath all our seeking and striving. When we stop adding layers of effort and expectation, what remains is simply this moment, this breath, this ordinary and extraordinary experience of being alive. Let your eyes close gently now. Let your body settle into rest. You have traveled far, but the journey was always a circle, bringing you back to where you started. The gate is open. It has always been open. You are already on the other side. You have always been on the other side. Simply rest here, in the peace that was never lost, in the home that was never far away. We have traveled far together tonight, through many stories and teachings, and yet we have arrived nowhere at all. That is the beautiful truth of the gateless gate. There was never anywhere to go. We have seen that the barrier between ourselves and peace is an illusion, a wall made of nothing but belief. We have discovered that we build this wall ourselves through our seeking and preparing, our waiting and reaching. We have learned that there is no crossing to make because we are already on the other side, have always been on the other side. We have found that the gateless gate leads back to ordinary life, to the kitchen and the fishing boat, to the washing of rice and the mending of nets. We have practiced living without reaching, resting in the present without constantly leaning toward the future. We have seen that every moment is an open gate, that the sacred is hidden in the ordinary, waiting for us to stop rushing past. And finally, we have come home. Not to a new place, but to where we have always been. Not through achievement or transformation, but through simple recognition. The gate was never closed. The peace was never far away. We were home all along. We simply did not know it. Now we can rest. Not because we have accomplished something, but because we have seen that there was never anything to accomplish. The searching can end. The striving can settle. There is just this breath, this moment, this gentle presence that asks nothing and offers everything. You are already home. You have always been home. Let the questions settle like leaves on still water. Let the seeking dissolve like morning mist. The gateless gate asks nothing of you except to be here, and you are here. You have always been here. Sleep well, and thank you for joining us at Sleepy Monk.